Does the ACC, heading into next football season, do they have a team that can actually contend with the big guys in the SEC and the Big Ten for a national championship?
You are Locked On ACC, your daily podcast on the Atlantic Coast Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Shout out to the everydayers, and thank you so much for making Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. He is Kenton Gibbs from Locked On Wolfpack. I am Alex Dono from Locked On Canes, and today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is here, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. New customers can bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. On this episode, we'll talk about why ACC basketball has declined and whether there's a way to bounce back or if this is just going to be who we are for a while. Back to football, Virginia Tech seems to have their new defensive coordinator. And, Kenton, we talked a little bit last week about the CBS Sports way too early top 25 in football. We spent most of the time talking about how they had Miami ranked number 3, which even as a Miami guy, I thought that was a little bit too high. But I want to take a look at the ESPN way too early top 25 for next football season. So they got 4 ACC teams in their top 25. They have Clemson coming in at number 7, who both Kenton and I agree should be the class on paper, at least, of the ACC this year. They've got the SMU Mustangs at number 15. They've got the Louisville Cardinals at number 20, and they have Miami down at 23, even after CBS Sports had Miami at number 3. So there's a big disparity there. We had Kenton, Clemson, and SMU in the college football playoff this season. Neither team was able to get past the opening game, and then all the narratives are the ACC didn't belong in the playoff, all that stuff. So heading into next season, can one of these teams, or maybe another not mentioned even, actually contend for a national championship and push the blue bloods of the Big Ten, who've had back-to-back national champions, and the beloved SEC? Do we have someone who can push these teams and make a deep run?
Dono, it hurts my heart to say this. It really does. It makes me sad because you know how much I love the Pony Express. You know how much I love the boys in Dallas. Absolutely. You know how much I love that swarming defense that they play. And some Kevin Jennings, give me more of it. I think when he learns how to stop playing hero ball, he's going to be fantastic. With that being said, I think every single one of the teams ranked in the top 25 except SMU can absolutely win a playoff game next year.
Ooh.
Every single team.
So all of them except. Wow.
And listen, when I look at SMU, I think to myself, what's going to have to happen for them to be the team that they, that can win a bowl game? Did you know that they're losing their top rusher, their top, I believe, 2 or 3 receivers? I believe Jordan Hudson is the only one that still has some eligibility left in their top 4 or 5 receivers. That's tough. You're losing. Again, it's just too much production between Roderick Daniels Jr., Keyshawn Smith, Moochie Dixon, and Matthew Hibner, all gone. And it's just like, listen, love me some RJ Maryland. Love that. I think that they're a really good group. I really do. Rashard Smith, I think he was part of the engine that made this offense go. And so I'm saying to myself, you were looking at a quarterback that already played a lot of hero ball last year when he had really good weapons around him. What's going to happen this year when the weapons are not quite up to that level? That's something that concerns me there. But every other team, I just see reasons why they could be it. You know what I mean? I really and truly do. Clemson is Clemson, okay? Yeah. Let's not sit around and kind of wonder why. This is a team that last year their Achilles heel was their passing, was pushing the ball downfield, and they got better at that as the year went on. And they're bringing everybody back. They're bringing back Wesco, Williams. In terms of the passing game, they're bringing everybody back. And Maffa is not that type of back that you're like, hey, we need to get him the ball in space and make him. He's a big, bruising, downhill, no frills type of guy. So, yes, you're losing Maffa. You're losing your leading rusher. again, same criticism that I lobbied towards SMU and saying Brashard Smith is gone. But it's a different scenario. It's a very different scenario. And I like Kevin Jennings more than I like Kay Klubnik. But again, you're just looking at a situation where you have way too many really talented guys on the perimeter for Clemson to where I'm thinking they're going to be primed to have another great year. And boy, defensively, when you talk about losing production or not, I mean, listen, Barry Carter, he's a big-time guy. He's a big-time player. He was a hell of a linebacker for Clemson for years. That Sammy Brown kid is terrifying.
Oh, yeah.
It's nightmare fuel if you're an offensive coordinator. I mean, he's everywhere. As a freshman, you could tell sometimes he didn't exactly know where his eyes were supposed to be, and he's still making plays all over the place everywhere. So I think as he develops in that defensive backfield, it's Clemson. The defensive backs are never going to be a problem. That's just I don't know what it is about them, but that's just kind of the way that they roll and operate. I think that they're primed to be a scary team. Louisville, you know what travels? If you got to travel for the playoffs, there's two things that travel in football: a run game and the defense. And Louisville has what two things in spades, Dono?
Run game and a
Run
defense.
game and the defense. And then you talk about your Miami Hurricanes. Now they're the most enigmatic of the three that I've
always.
It's Miami. If the questions are answered, it wouldn't be Miami, okay? But they're the most enigmatic of the three because I believe that their defense, first of all, I hate to say this for a Miami team, but the tip of the spear is Ruben Hurricane Bay. We know that. We know that he is going to set the world on fire next year. I believe he's going to be healthy. He's going to be better. And I think next year, this year he showed flashes of where you're like, oh my, we've got to do something about that guy halfway through the game. I think next year is going to be a situation where people know from go, either you deal with him meaningfully in your game plan or he's going to wreck it. He's going to wreck it. And when he starts off that way, it makes it easier on the guys in the back end. Not to mention their new DC hire, I think will be a lot. Will have them a lot more prepared than they were this year because talent's never an issue with Miami. I've never looked at Miami and said, oh, they don't have ball players. It's always something with the guys with the headsets or something with chemistry, and they don't have as bolsterous of a transfer portal class as they have had in the past. And so I can see them competing as well. And Carson Beck, while I don't love him as much as most people, I think he's good enough to where if those offensive pieces can be good with him, not great, that we don't need Cam Ward, 40-point-a-game offense. If they can be good enough to, let's say, 30, 24 to, I'd probably say 27, 30, more than that. If they're in that range about every game, they'll have a shot because I think that defense is going to be much improved. And they were young last year. That defense was fairly young last year. They're only going to get older, only going to get better. I could see those three teams competing. SMU, I love you. My heart goes out to you. I think this is going to be a rebuilding year.
Yeah, and I think both Clemson and Miami made necessary moves to change defensive coordinators, and I thought they both made good moves. Clemson's defense was not good enough by their standards, and they bring in Tom Allen. They poached him from Penn State. Miami, you mentioned, hired a new coordinator, Corey Heatherman, who was the DC on a very successful Minnesota defense last year. And Miami had personnel-wise not nearly enough at defensive back, and they have already signed 5 DBs through the transfer portal. So they're doing what they can to address those needs. So let's take a look. Let's zoom out. We mentioned where the ACC teams sit in this way too early from ESPN. Clemson at 7, SMU at 15, Louisville at 20, Miami at 23. Here's who else they've got in there. So ESPN ranks Ohio State at number 1 to repeat. I think a big question for the Buckeyes is, how's the quarterback transition going to go, Kenton? Because you're going from Will Howard, who elder statesman, veteran transfer player, one-and-done guy, but was just, he got better as the season went on, and they're going to transition. They're going the opposite route because their likely starter is going to be a guy who was a true freshman this year, Julian Sayin, who only attempted 12 passes. So former 5-star talent and all that, but we'll see how that – he's going to have plenty of wide receivers, though, to help him with that transition, but we'll see how that goes for them. They've got Texas at number 2. They're, of course, making a quarterback change of their own. They're going to hand it over to Arch Manning. Penn State at 3, Notre Dame at 4, Georgia 5, Oregon 6 before Clemson at 7. Then they got LSU at 8, BYU 9, South Carolina 10, Iowa State 11, Alabama 12. It's kind of funny ESPN wouldn't have Alabama higher. Maybe it's not true what they say about ESPN loving Alabama so much. Illinois 13, Arizona State 14, SMU as mentioned at 15, Kansas State, then Indiana, Florida at 18, Tennessee at 19, Louisville 20, Michigan 21, Texas A&M 22, Miami 23, Boise State 24, and Ole Miss 25. I know it's locked on ACC, but you think what do you think of Florida at 18? Because like depending on who you listen to, the DJ Lagway hype train gets to be so momentous that people talk about Florida like maybe they should be a top 10 team, not number 18.
I think 18 is right for them because DJ Lagway is going to have to do his best Cam Ward impression next year.
Yeah.
I don't think anything about their defense. Nothing.
Yeah.
Literally nothing about their defense. And here's the thing. As much as I want to believe, man, they did a really smart thing by paying by not buying out Billy Napier and buying better players in the portal instead, which, by the way, I'm not saying buying players is a knock against anybody because, hey, it's the nature of college football. The national championship winning team had a $20 million roster. It's just a deal.
Yeah.
Right. I do, however, think that you're putting Flex Seal over the Hoover Dam with a crack in it by saying, oh, we got a bad head coach. Boom, we're going to get them better players. It does not matter.
It's a great point.
It does not. If the problems that players were leaving over were player development, why would just buying better players later?
I mean, Kenton, if I don't know how to drive a stick shift, getting me a Ferrari is not gonna help the situation if it's not automatic.
If you don't know how to drive at all, why would I give you a Ferrari, even if it was automatic? Yeah. If you can't, if I don't trust you to back out the parking lot, why would I say, you know what, the money we were going to spend on your car insurance, we use it as a down payment for a Ferrari? What? So, I think that they've kind of put themselves behind the 8 ball in that regard, but more power to them. I'm sure it'll just mean more next season.
That's right. Well, we do have some hoops to talk about because Brett Friedlander wrote a good article about, why the ACC is down. Like, we're down bad when it comes to basketball, which does not fit the ACC reputation. Sticking with football, though, for a second, it looks like Virginia Tech has a new defensive coordinator. You want to keep it locked right here. We're only get started on this brand new episode of Locked on ACC. Guys, it's tax season, and you know what that means? It means I will not break a sweat thanks to Intuit TurboTax, our great sponsor. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you're going to get any money back, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now, Taxes is matching with a TurboTax agent, TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives you your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find you every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. Also, you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, and no worries. Now, this is Taxes. Get an expert now at TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service. Real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. Thank you so much for making Locked on ACC your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure for your next listen, you check out our other shows. Kenton and Grayson Boone host Locked on Wolfpack. I host Locked on Canes. So, we were talking, Kenton, about other ACC schools making their defensive coordinator hires. Tom Allen to Clemson, Corey Heatherman to Miami, most notably. And it looks like Virginia Tech also now has their guy. This is being finalized as we record this here on Monday evening. They're on the cusp, according to Pete Thamel of ESPN, of hiring Arizona Cardinals linebackers coach Sam Seph Keys to be the school's new defensive coordinator. I like about Seph Keys, he's got NFL experience for the past several years, Kenton. Arizona Cardinals linebackers coach for the past 2 NFL seasons, was on the Minnesota Vikings staff for 2 seasons prior to that. One thing I don't see a whole lot of is defensive play calling experience, but I think anytime you see college programs getting coaches who have NFL experience and have been part of those cultures, I think that's probably a good starting point here for Virginia Tech, whose defense was, bang average, really probably worse than that, but they were ranked 57th in the country last year.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing here in terms of this new hire is you're thinking about a guy who's going to bring in a wonky defense. And boy, who does better with wonky defenses than Virginia Tech? When you think about all those years with Bud Foster, did you know that people didn't know what position Cam Chancellor would play in the NFL because of how Bud Foster used him? He was all over the place. He was on the line of scrimmage. Sometimes he was in the linebacker position. Sometimes he was a deep middle hole safety. He did a little bit of everything, which I don't know why, but it just feels to me like Virginia Tech is getting back to those roots with this hire. Now, like you said, like you alluded to, there is a lack of play calling experience.
Yeah.
And one thing that I noticed with a lot of rookie coordinators and coaches and all that, you're going to see a lot of trying to be somebody else. And I feel like he's going to try, at least to start this season off, to be this like, oh, everybody says we should run base, so we should run. Brother, that's not what you're hired for, okay? No. You're going to be hired to be very aggressive. The Cardinals defense this year was fairly aggressive and got after quarterbacks and whatnot. You're going to be asked to do the same thing here because we know what Virginia Tech does when it comes to DBs, okay? So if you can get to quarterbacks soon enough, if you can stop the run at a high enough clip, you'll be just fine. But that's always going to be a situation where, again, rookie coordinator, how much of you are you going to be? I want to see you be your best self and let your flag fly. This is who I am from day one. But it's just much easier said than done.
Yeah. Now, to be fair, Seph Keys doesn't have zero play calling experience, but here's where he was a defensive play caller, Kenton. Wofford and UW Platteville. I don't even know what that is, but he did call defensive plays at those locations. So that, it's something. It's something on the resume.
Alex Marinovich Dono, come on. You and I both know that that's not exactly the same level of ball as you would be playing in the NFL or playing in the ACC. With all due respect to Wofford, it's a different type of thing. But I
didn't even know Wofford had a football program.
Oh, come on, man! They're a money game team for a lot of teams in the Carolinas. Whenever a team in North or South Carolina wants to play a team that they know they're going to be, it's either Presbyterian, Wofford, South Carolina State. Those are generally the three. They're like, oh, come on over here. We're going to beat your brains out. We're going to pay you for it.
In Florida, yeah, in my state in Florida, it's Bethune-Cookman, Florida A&M are the major ones.
Yeah. And that's just, Wofford is just one of the ones in the North Carolina area. But I will say this. I'm excited to see how this works out. Because I don't think, the ACC having more good coaches is always a great time. As a matter of fact, we'll get into a little later how a lack of good coaches can affect you.
Yeah.
But in all seriousness, I think that this is a pretty good hire, and I want to see how it pans out.
Yeah, so let's shift gears to basketball because honestly, to me, the biggest thing affecting ACC basketball, Kenton, is we went from 2 years ago, having multiple Hall of Fame caliber coaches and coaches who were all-time wins leaders at their various schools to suddenly a lot of those guys all retiring within 2 years and in some cases within 2 months of each other with what, we just experienced with Tony Bennett and Jim Larinaga both stepping away within a short period of time from Virginia and from Miami respectively. And this was this caught my attention. Brett Friedlander from Saturday Down South wrote this article, "No longer the greatest. ACC basketball has fallen victim to finances, expansion, and its own bad decisions." So let me give you an excerpt of this. And then, Kenton, we can talk about how the ACC can bounce back, right?
Yeah.
He says a steady decline that began after the COVID-interrupted 2020 season has reached a historic new low this year. other than Duke, which has maintained its familiar spot near the top of the national polls, and Louisville, revived under first-year coach Pat Kelsey. The drop-off has been monumental, he says. With just over a month remaining in the season, 8 of the league's 18 members have losing records and are ranked 111th or worse in the NCAA's net rankings. The conference went 2-14 in the SEC ACC challenge, and its overall non-conference winning percentage of .652, 65.2%, is its worst since 1968, 1969. Woof. Like Muhammad Ali, some of the ACC's decline can be traced to the inevitable passage of time. As immortal as Coach K, Roy Williams, Jim Boeheim, Tony Bennett, Mike Bray, and Jim Larinaga might have seemed, they couldn't go on forever, and their departures have left a significant coaching vacuum throughout the league, he says. You don't lose Hall of Famers and coaching legends without expecting at least some drop-off, but the void has grown even larger because of the hires made to replace them. Rather than seeking out the best, most experienced candidates, Duke, North Carolina, and Syracuse all chose to stay within the family by hiring former star players with no previous head coaching experience. Louisville went the same direction after firing Chris Mack in 2022 in the wake of an NCAA investigation into alleged rules violations. On-the-job training gambles. Only the Blue Devils' John Shire appears to have paid off, which is fair. While Hubert Davis has taken the Tar Heels to a Final Four and won an ACC regular season title, he's in serious danger of missing the NCAA tournament for the second time in 3 years. Syracuse is 9-11 in year 2 under Adrian Autry, and Kenny Payne was let go after winning only 12 games in his 2 campaigns with the Cardinals. Besides Davis, only one other current ACC coach has taken a team to the Final Four, and it took a miracle for Kevin Keats to get NC State there a year ago. So that the first big point, Kenton, let's focus on that for a second, is the coaching. Now, I think, in the case of, both Virginia and Miami, both of their coaches, Ron Sanchez at UVA and Bill Courtney at Miami, both have interim tags. Now, Miami's awful, though. I mean, I have a hard time. Like, part of my job is watching Miami basketball. And the fact that we had to be really happy that they actually took a game to overtime against Cal that they ultimately lost. Like, hey, we didn't lose by 30 or 40. This is fantastic. It's really bad. But, to be fair, they haven't found their next permanent head coach yet. Neither has Virginia. I mean, I guess maybe there's a chance Sanchez could stick around. But, both of those teams are looking for their next guy. But overall, do you think the ACC is going to start investing in coaches within the next couple of years to try and bounce back from this?
Oh, you have to. You have to. But, as much as I want to say something, actually, you know what? No, I'm going to say it. I'm going to be bold and I'm going to say it. Why does the ACC not get the benefit of the doubt that other conferences get in not only basketball, but also other sports?
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, they're having a bad year. That's okay. It happens. It happens sometimes, and they'll bounce back. And another thing, wasn't the ACC supposed to be down last year going into the tournament?
Oh, yeah, they overperformed in the tournament. Yeah.
The ACC was cooked down, though. They were cooked. Oh, yeah. Terrible old NC State won your conference tournament. There's no way. They're right next to Kentucky. And Kentucky, once they beat the mess out of Oakland University, because there's no way some 6-foot bald guy could go out there and shoot the lights out, or balding guy could go out there and shoot the lights out. So I say all that to say, I think the ACC deserves a little grace here, because historically, when you've been dominant year after year after year after year after year,
yeah,
and there is no direct one-for-one moment to say this is the problem, sometimes the ebb and flow of things just make downs happen. But now, to address those things you talked about in terms of the coaching, you absolutely have to invest in coaching. You absolutely have to make sure that you're nailing the right hires. And it is, I'm going to say something about everybody hiring in-house that I need everybody to not react negatively or super terribly when I say this word. Some of these schools are starting to have incestuous gene pools. You need to diversify. You need to diversify. You need to have guys who are themselves. A guy who comes from another guy's coaching tree, who saw that guy win national championships by running the same 12 sets all the time, is going to want to emulate that without realizing, oh, that guy retired not just because he was old, because the game passed him by. The game had passed that concept by. So you go out and you try to do the same thing to diminishing returns, because now everybody knows the thing. Everybody knows the thing that you want to do well. So I look at this situation with some of these teams that replaced from in-house and all that. Just, dude, clean house. Go back, reshuffle the deck, try again, okay? Because, again, having this situation where we've got to keep it in the family, no, you don't. You need to expand the family.
It's like a House Targaryen in Game of Thrones. You know, you gotta branch out that family tree a little bit. You want to keep it like so. The other part of this is, does the ACC need to invest more from a basketball point of view in NIL? Because that's the idea of buying players used to be taboo. You talked about Ohio State football, $20 million roster. They won a championship. There's no more taboo around that. You want to keep it locked right here. We're not done yet on this brand new episode of Locked On ACC. Oh, my friends, we are certainly not done yet with FanDuel. In fact, Super Bowl 59 is coming up. This is the time to get in. If you haven't already signed up, you got the Super Bowl coming up. One game, two teams. We get Chiefs versus Eagles, a familiar matchup, endless possibilities, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, and yeah, Patrick Mahomes seems like the safe pick there, right? Or can we select a referee as the MVP? Can we do that? Or you could even bet the coin toss. FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field, and the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, that's the icing on the cake. Guys, there are literally hundreds, if not thousands, of prop bets you can get for this game. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official partner of Super Bowl 59. Thank you so much for making Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch today. Alex Dono alongside Kenton Gibbs. He does an awesome job on Locked On Wolfpack. I host Locked On Canes. And so, Friedlander also talks about in this ACC decline thing, the significant revenue gap that exists between the ACC and its top rivals has also hurt the quality of play, he says. So as a product watered down by expansion and the emphasis that's been placed on football as the financial engine that drives college sports in the NIL era, he says. Oh, that is an interesting point, Kenton, because when the ACC decided to expand and, when a lot of these schools, like you think about, the newfound investment that North Carolina is now making in NIL because of Bill Belichick, like a lot of these decisions now in a conference where a lot of the decisions used to be made maybe with basketball first, or at least basketball and football kind of on an even tier. These football decisions now tend to trump the basketball decisions. I don't think they added 3 schools to the ACC for the benefit of basketball. I think every decision is made with football in mind.
Well, Dono, there was an episode of Everybody Hates Chris where they talked about who gets the big piece of chicken and why, right? And it was long known in different cultures, particularly the African-American tradition, that the man of the house, the patriarch of the house, gets the big piece of chicken. You know why?
Yeah.
Because he needed the most energy to go out and work and do the things.
Yeah.
Of course, football is going to always receive the most investment because they are working and doing the things financially that basketball simply cannot.
True.
A great again, we've talked about realignment so much. Why has no conference come clawing for Kansas? Why didn't the SEC break down every door and say, Jayhawks, get your tail in here?
Isn't UConn having trouble finding a home?
The Big Ten, you don't want UConn? No,
yeah.
They do nothing for you. Let me tell you why. They're a team that, while you may not consider them a blue blood, they sure as hell got something in their blood that got them winning national championships regularly, more regularly than some of the teams that we would consider blue bloods. And yet nobody's checking for them. Why? It's 2 things. Your market's not big enough and football is the driver. So obviously football is always going to get the big piece of chicken, but the thing behind that, that there is a lot of truth to, in Brett's words. Well, now, at what point do you invest in NIL for basketball players? Because it's a similar situation. It's a simpler situation. If you're willing to pay the ducats, you will get the best players. If you're not, you won't. And that's what this is. Everybody keeps talking about, oh, everything is 100% transactional and all that. Well, let me ask you all. Let me ask you, person listening to this, when you do accounting for enterprise rental car, do you do it because you always dreamed of doing logistics and travel and booking short-term rentals for people? Is that why you do it? Oh, no. I get it. Person who does software engineering for Dell, was it a passion of yours that when you were a kid, you just knew, oh, Dell is the place I need to be? No, you do it for the money. These kids are doing it for the same reason. And so it's not going to benefit you to cry and whine and complain about NIL, which we've seen some teams do. And the criers, whiners, and complainers get left behind. If the ACC doesn't want to be that in basketball, guess what? Spend the ducats. Spend the money, get the best players, and keep it pushing, okay? It is not where the world that y'all knew, where all of it was for dear old state, where all of it was for the U, where all of it was for, they come here because they just love the university. Those days are gone. They're gone. Christina, where's Christina? She's gone. What you're stuck with is the reality that, like Brett Freelander talked about, you have to pay into the infrastructure. You have to, and more important than the infrastructure, honestly, just pay the players. Just pay the players. Yes. I think, especially in basketball, where the best guys know they're going to be there for a year anyway, just pay the players. Right. Just pay the players and go about your way.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, I'll tell you, on our next episode, we're going to talk about the big takeaways from the full revelation of the ACC football schedule. That's happening later on tonight. We're here with you on Monday night. It's going to be later on this evening, so we'll definitely react to that. Now, we already know everybody's week 0 and week 1 games, a lot of those non-conference. We know the conference opener for every team, but we don't have the full schedules, which is important, right? Knowing, congested parts of the schedule, who you're playing when. So we will break that down next time. Make sure you follow us. Follow Kenton at TGIF_Kenton on X. Follow me at Locked On Canes. And we will talk to you next time on another episode of Locked On ACC, part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.